This lesson is perspective drawing, 2-point perspective. And we begin by coming down halfway from the top, a little bit more. In this case, it's a 12-inch paper, and I've come down just about 7 inches, and I've drawn a line which represents the horizon line. On either end is a VP, which represents a vanishing point. Now, the tools that you need for this lesson would be, first of all, a ruler. You will also need an eraser. It should be a soft eraser. Then you're going to have several different pencils. We are going to use a 2B pencil because visually it'll be a little easier to see. And it is a professional 2B pencil. And also we will use a softer pencil, which will be a 4B. Now, if I was doing a more creative painting, I would be moving to a 4B, 6B, and possibly a double E. And these are very soft leads. Now, for drafting and for this kind of perspective drawing, the architect will use a harder pencil, which is an HB. Now, I'm going to start today with a little house, and I'm going to measure just about halfway over, which will be approximately 8 inches. Actually, I'm going to do maybe 2 drawings, so I'll come over further. I'll come over to a 9-inch for my paper, which is 12 by 16. All right, so halfway over, I'm going to draw a line for the little house, and I'm going to make it about 2.5 inches above the line, and I'm going to make it about just 1.5 inches below the line. Now, this could vary depending on the size of your paper and the size that you want to make the house. We are actually on a fairly limited paper. It's kind of small, so it won't be too big. Now, from the very top of this line to the VP, I'm going to draw the construction lines, and this will look this way. Oops, not like that. It should be straight. I slipped. Fortunately, it's just paper that can be easily erased, and I am going to do it again. There, that's the way it should look. Now, I am using the 2B pencil, and on this side, same thing, vanishing point to the top of the line. And I'm sure many of you have had this lesson. If you haven't, it is a really important one, and it should be in your repertoire of abilities with the creative process. Later, as you get into drawing, it is just naturally done as intuitive in your understanding. You just can do this less freehand perspective. And the artist rarely uses rulers to do the lines like this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the side of the building, and I'm going to choose to make it just about this far over. And in this case, it's about 3 inches over. And the side of the building is going to be like that. And over here, I'm choosing to do just about maybe 4 inches because I have an idea to do something else on the side. So here we have 4 inches and 3 inches. And if you want to remember, you can always make a little notation to remember how far over you came. It's always a nice idea to remind yourself in the future if you'd ever want to do it again. This, in fact, is 2.5, and this is 1.5. And I'm just making a little light annotation to remember. Now, the neat part about perspective drawing is that if you do it right and you have a good eye, you can make it really look like it's supposed to. So how do we get the top of the roof to be exactly right? We draw a pattern on the side of the building, and where it meets in the middle, we go up. And you could go up as far as you want. I'm going to take it about 2 inches above so that I'll have a nice roof line. Now I'm going to take that top, tip top, and go to the vanishing point again, like that. Then I'm going to go from the tip top to the vanishing point again on the right-hand side. And here we go. All right, you're going to say, oh my, is that going to be right? Yes, it will. Now you go from this point to that point, and I'm going to make an overhang on my little building. This line is to be parallel to this line. It does not go to the vanishing point. And there, of course, are rules to follow to do that. I prefer just to use my eye, which is fairly well trained, and to put a line like that. And now from the tip top of this to the vanishing point to this one over there, draw another line. In a few minutes, I will enhance these with a color so you'll see which ones are the first drawing lines. What do we do over here? We go here to here and make the overhang right there. All of a sudden, it begins to look right. And the overhang here, that little bit that we could see, goes this way to this vanishing point. All right, we now have a little box in space, which eventually is going to be a log cabin in my drawing. I'm not sure what you're going to draw, but you may choose to follow my idea, or you may have a better idea of your own. Now, the overhang itself is going to have a shadow, and it's going to go just like that. And the shadow will be a little bit darker, but it will also have a directional line which will be parallel to the outside line. Now this overhang is going to have some interesting things. It's going to have little pieces of wood sticking out that are going to give it some interest. And in this case, they'll probably be part of the little log cabin. So I'm going to draw them in lightly so I won't forget what I had in mind. And here again, we have a shadow that's going to be underneath this eave. So I'm going to draw the line, and this area will be shadowed later when it's painted. All right, are you with me? Mm-hmm. Good. The next part of this is going to be the window that will be here. And we have the right to make the first window exactly the way we want it to be. And now we take the top of the window and we draw a line this way. And the bottom of the window, we draw it this way. Now we have this little box. It doesn't quite look right to me. And that's because it also needs to have an X in it to find the center, exactly like we did on the end of the building. So now we have an X. Now we begin the next part of this drawing, which is a little bit harder, a little complicated. But I've got a center between the top and the bottom, and I have a plan. I'm going to find the next window and then another window. They are going to be in perspective. They'll be exactly the same size. There is a rule for doing this. And in order to have lines that are equally spaced that do exactly like what this is doing, you need to have the first one and the second one. Then you take and you are able to draw the third line. You're allowed to do this. And you take a line from the top of the second building to the bottom, window, to the bottom of the third line, like this. Then you go and you can find the next the next set by going from the top of the second to the bottom of this one. You may now draw the width that you want this one to be, and you take a line from the top of this through the center of the third one, and you will find the next one. Now it's a little hard to see because they're all the same line, so I'm just going to shade it a tiny little bit, and you will see the first window and the second window. It should come clear. And now the next one, through this, to get this one. Now we'll do this rule again with a set of fence poles. I now have 3 little windows that are the same size in reality, but they're going away from us to a vanishing point. Kind of a neat rule. Over on this side of the building, I'm going to put a doorway, and I'm going to set in a vertical here, and I can make it that wide, any width I want it to be, and I'm going to go this way. So now we have a doorway, and oh, it should have an inset like this, and maybe it's going to have some little steps going out this way, or perhaps a porch. So you could do that like this. And now we have a porch that will be in proportion and exactly where it ought to be. All right. So now the next thing to do is to say what else would be on the front of that little building. Perhaps right now we should just leave it as it is. There's a lot of lines to look at until we get completely clear with how this drawing is going to be. So let's finish this part. And now let's say, well, what would we put on this side of the building? Perhaps we could put, let's say, at least 3 trees that would be going in perspective. And I'm going to go ahead and arbitrarily place the first tree in my picture. And I'm going to start it just about here. And I'm going to make it go about that high. So that's going to be my first tree. And it's going to come into perspective this way, and it's going to go into perspective this way. And down the way will be another tree and then another. And they're going to be the same kind of tree, and I want them to be equally spaced apart. So I'm going to do the first tree, and the second tree will be just about here. And I'm going to find the center of this by actually measuring it. I'm used to just drawing it without lines, but in this case, I'm going to try to teach how I would do it. I would have the center of this line, this being 9 inches. Halfway is 4.5. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4.5, right about in here would be the center of that tree. So right about here, let's look at this one. This is about 5.5. So we have 2 3/4 right here. Okay, that's the center. We go this way. From the top of the first one to the center of the second one, I'm going to get the third one. From the top of the third one to the center of from the top of the second one through the center of the third one, I'm going to get the fourth one. And it's going to be here. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And in this case, there'll be trees that will be in perspective. I have the main lines. I'm not going to draw the trees on this paper, but I have the structure lines for my drawing, which will come later. Now, perhaps there might be a road or a sidewalk or something that would be between these two objects, but pretty much this is the plan for a little drawing painting. Again, drawing, perspective, 2 point, and in this case, I've shown you also 1 point. And I'm going to put this right down here. 1 point. And it's really good for you to annotate your drawing so that you can remember what we're doing. Now I'm going to take this darker marker and I'm going to go ahead and enhance the lines and review what we've done. I think you can already see the horizon line, and I have drawn the first line, which is the closest line to you. I have then arbitrarily chosen the line that would indicate that side of the building and the line that indicates this side of the building. Then I have drawn the X, which I will tell you took me to the top of this. Now I have the roof line, which is parallel front to back. And I've done a bit of an overhang, which I think makes it quite attractive. All right, I've then drawn a couple of little posts that have come out from the building like this, and here, and here. And they are going to the vanishing point. I then drew a parallel line for the top of the building. And then, knowing that these little posts and how they're constructed, I've been able to draw the end of it. And I want to do that right now so they're carefully placed exactly where they need to be. And again, it's larger, middle size, and smaller. The next thing I did was to draw these little windows, establishing the first line, establishing the second line, and then the third one, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth line. We're a little too high there. And we have the building with 3 small windows going to the vanishing point. Now, this is an example of 1 point perspective, and I went over here to show you where I might put the trees. So I'll establish these lines again for 1 point perspective. The first one, the second one, and how do we get the second one? We have the center. We go from the top of the first to the center of the second to get the third. And how do we get the fourth? We go through the top of the second to the center of the third to get the fourth. Now we have the placement of 4 trees or 4 posts or telephone poles or whatever you want to do going into perspective. This is an example of 1 point perspective. This is an example going this way and this way of 2 point perspective. And let's put in a little doorway so as not to forget where it is. And the top of the doorway goes to the vanishing point. All right. And this side of the roof does not go to the vanishing point. In fact, this is where a lot of people go wrong, and they don't figure out that this is a line that would touch the top of this and the top of the roof. Very important aspects of drawing in perspective. And now a little porch or a sidewalk that might go out from the building goes this way, always to the vanishing point. You hold your ruler out if you need to make sure it's accurate. Then the tip of this one goes back to that, the end of it. Then if you want to draw going out there to the vanishing point, some steps or whatever, always use a pencil on your first run. Make sure you don't lock it in with paint or a marker until you're sure you have it right, because it's easy to make a mistake. So here we have the possibility of a step like this, and the side of the step would go to the vanishing point, and this up and down and parallel. So it's like that. Here we have perhaps a little brick facade of some kind like this. And over here, we probably could have land or something that would come up and fill in that space. So we have the format and the plan for a little painting. Look for that the next time we meet.